The sky over Niamey exploded at midnight on January 29th as tracer fire and weaponized drones turned a quiet airport into a battlefield. But make no mistake, this was not a moment of weakness for Niger. It was a cold, calculated ambush set by the brave intelligence forces of the Sahel to protect a treasure worth hundreds of millions of dollars. What happens to the global economy and the stability of the US dollar if this massive stockpile of uranium is traded on Africa's terms rather than the West's? We are standing at a crossroads where the energy security of Europe and the financial dominance of the old world are being challenged by the iron will of Ibrahim Traoré and the AES. For decades, our people have suffered in the shadows of the very mines that lit up the streets of Paris. That era is over. This is a story of how the oppressed became the masters of the board. We will dive into the secret details of this airport trap and the hidden war for the resources that belong to the African people. If you believe in the future of a sovereign Africa, hit like and subscribe right now. Let us fill the comments with Africa Rise or Amen to show the world that we stand united with our leaders. Our freedom is no longer a dream. It is being won on the front lines today. To understand what really happened on that fateful night at Diori Hamani International Airport, you have to look past the smoke and the flashes of gunfire. For years, the world was told that African militaries were disorganized, reactive, and always one step behind. We were told that without Western guidance, our borders would crumble. But last night, the soldiers of Niger, under the strategic umbrella of the Alliance of Sahel States, proved that the old narrative is dead. They didn't just defend a location. They executed a high-level counterintelligence operation that will be studied for years. Let us set the scene. Imagine the silence of the desert night, suddenly broken by the low, menacing hum of FPV drones. These are not toys. These are first-person view, weaponized drones, the kind of technology we see in modern high-tech battlefields in Eastern Europe. To operate these effectively, you need more than just a rebel in sandals with a rifle. You need training, technical logistics, and a steady stream of funding. This was a sophisticated, asymmetric assault designed to overwhelm and terrorize. The attackers expected chaos. They expected to see soldiers running in fear, or leaving the most valuable cargo on the continent ripe for the taking. But they walked into a wall of steel. You see, the intelligence services of Niger had been listening. For days, they had intercepted the encrypted communications of the enemy. They knew the exact moment the first drone would take flight. They knew the coordinates of the ground teams. Instead of shutting down the airport and making a scene, they did something far more dangerous for the enemy. They waited. They positioned special forces in the shadows. They activated advanced air defense systems that were silent until the very moment they were needed. When the attackers launched their drones expecting to disable the airport's defenses, those drones were swatted out of the sky in seconds. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter of technology. The firefight on the ground lasted for about an hour. But sources tell us this was a controlled engagement. The revolutionary government of Niger wasn't fighting for its life. It was fighting to collect evidence. This is the part that should make every foreign operative in the Sahel lose sleep tonight. Niger's forces didn't just repel the attack. They captured multiple operatives alive. Think about the implications of that for a moment. Dead men tell no tales, but captured attackers talk. They reveal who paid for the drones. They reveal which safe houses they used and who provided the satellite imagery for their mission. Right now, there is a heavy silence coming from the government in Niamey. Some Western analysts think this is because the government is shaken. They couldn't be more wrong. This silence is the sound of an intelligence network being rolled up. Every minute those captives spend in detention, another shadow network is being exposed. This was a textbook counterintelligence victory. For decades, foreign agencies operated in our lands with total information dominance. They thought they were the only ones playing chess while we were playing checkers. But now, with the technical assistance and training from new partners like Russia, the playing field has leveled. Our leaders, like Ibrahim Traoré, have realized that to protect our sovereignty, we must be masters of the shadows as well as the battlefield. Why was this airport so important? Why would anyone risk such a brazen attack on a capital city's international gateway? It is because of what was sitting on that tarmac. Over 1,000 tons of concentrated uranium packed into containers, waiting for a destination that certain Western powers find unacceptable. This isn't just a pile of rocks. It represents the energy security of France and the financial leverage of the entire West. If Niger successfully moves this resource on its own terms, the old colonial economic model collapses. The attackers weren't just trying to cause chaos. They were trying to see how well that uranium was guarded. They were testing the response times. They were trying to map out the defense perimeter for a potential larger operation. This is what we call a reconnaissance by fire. You send in expendable assets to see where the hidden guns are. But the intelligence services of the AES saw through the ruse. By crushing the probe and capturing the players, they sent a clear message to whoever is pulling the strings from the comfort of a foreign capital. We see you. We know what you are after, and you will not take it. The era of Africa being a playground for foreign intelligence games is coming to an end. We are seeing a new level of sophistication. This is about more than just military might. It is about the dignity of a nation that refuses to be intimidated. While the mainstream media tries to frame this as just another insurgent attack, we know better. This was a victory for African intelligence. It was a victory for every person who believes that we are capable of defending our own riches. The hunters have truly become the haunted. They thought they could sneak in under the cover of darkness, but they found that the lions of the Sahel are now wide awake, and their eyes are everywhere. And to truly understand why blood is being spilled at an airport in the middle of the night, we have to travel north, far away from the cameras of the capital, to the dusty, wind-swept plains of Arlit. This is where the earth is torn open to reveal the yellow cake uranium that has powered the grandeur of Europe for over half a century. But if you look closely at the people who live atop this immense wealth, you won't see luxury. You will see the face of a man like Amadou. Amadou is 52 years old, a father who spent 20 years working in the depths of the mines, controlled by the French company URANIUM. Today, his lungs are heavy with dust, and his body is weary from decades of labor that never quite paid enough to put meat on the table every night. While the lights of the Eiffel Tower and the heaters in every Parisian apartment run on the very ore he pulled from the ground, Amadou's own home in Niger often sits in total darkness. This is the colonial economic model in its purest, most brutal form. The profits flow across the Mediterranean to the glass towers of Paris, while the radiation and the poverty stay right here in the Sahel. For decades, this was just the way things were. We were told it was a fair trade, that Western expertise was the only thing standing between us and total collapse. But the intellectuals of our diaspora, the brilliant African minds working as scientists and engineers in the heart of the West, see the hypocrisy for what it is. They sit in cities like London, New York, and Berlin, watching as the very nations that lecture Africa on transparency and the rule of law use international courts to try and freeze our own assets. These are the brothers and sisters who are now looking back toward the Sahel, realizing that the vision of leaders like Ibrahim Traoré isn't just a political movement, it is a reclamation of our dignity. They see that the fight in Niamey is the same fight they face every day when their expertise is overlooked or their heritage is treated as a burden. The strategic map of this conflict is vast and the stakes are higher than most people realize. When the military government of Niger made the bold move to nationalize the mines in June, they didn't just change a contract. They declared a war for sovereignty. In September, an international court, a kick sitting thousands of miles away in a climate-controlled room, ordered Niger not to move or sell the uranium that Orano claimed belonged to them. Think about the audacity of that. A foreign court telling a sovereign African nation that the very soil beneath its feet belongs to a company from its former colonizer. They called it theft when Niger decided to keep its own resources. They called it a violation of law when the people finally said no more. This is the emotional enemy we face, a system that uses the language of justice to maintain a state of permanent injustice. The reaction from the West has been a mixture of arrogance and absolute panic. To France, losing access to Niger's uranium isn't just a financial blow. It is an existential threat to their status as a global power. Without our uranium, the French energy grid, yours which relies on nuclear power for 70% of its electricity, begins to wobble. The price of energy in Europe would skyrocket, and the political fallout for their leaders would be catastrophic. This is why we see such desperate moves. This is why the European Union sends high-level delegations to Niamey under the guise of security cooperation. They aren't there to talk about peace. They are there to check the locks on the warehouse. They are there to see if the threats of sanctions and the pressure of the US dollar are enough to make the revolutionary leaders of the AES blink. But Ibrahim Traoré and the leaders of the Sahel are no longer blinking. They are drawing a line in the sand. They know that if they fail now, the price will be another 100 years of servitude. Each year, the price of failure is the continued suffering of men like Amadou, whose children will grow up in the same shadows of the same mines with no hope of a better life. The price of failure is the collapse of the dream of a united, self-sufficient Africa. This is why the airport trap was so significant. It showed that we are no longer willing to play the role of the victim. We are now the strategists. We are the ones setting the terms of the engagement. Imagine the conversation in the halls of power in Washington or Brussels right now. They are realizing that their old tools, the threats of cutting aid, the diplomatic isolation, are losing their sting. They see that Africa is finding new partners who treat us as equals, not as subjects. They see that the narrative is shifting. And the question we must all ask ourselves today is a simple one. Can Africa truly stand on its own? Or are we so addicted to the approval of our former masters that we will let them steal our future right out from under us? The people of the Sahel have already given their answer. They are choosing the path of resistance, the path of the AES, and the path of true independence. This uranium war is the ultimate test of our generation. It is a battle between the old world that wants to keep us in the dark and a new Africa that is ready to light its own way. Every ton of ore that remains in our control is a victory for sovereignty. Every attempt by foreign operatives to destabilize our governments is a reminder of how desperate they are. They are afraid of an Africa that knows its worth. They are terrified of a continent where the resources benefit the people who live on the land, not the shareholders in a distant city. As we watch this high-stakes game unfold, remember that it is not just about minerals. It is about whether the children of Arlit will finally get to see the light that their fathers worked so hard to provide for the rest of the world. The shift we are seeing in the Sahel today is not just a change in leadership. It is a total realignment of the stars. For decades, Western powers assumed that if Africa ever left their orbit, it would simply drift into chaos. They never imagined that we would have the courage to walk away and build our own alliances. But that is exactly what is happening. The silence of the desert is being replaced by the thunderous roar of Russian Il-76 cargo planes landing at Niamey International Airport. These are not your average transport aircraft. They are the workhorses of the Russian military, capable of carrying over 50 tons of cargo each. And in the first few weeks of this year, something very strange happened. These massive planes appeared on the tarmac, but if you checked the international flight tracking data, there was nothing. No logs, no registered arrivals, no departures. They were like ghosts in the night. This is how you operate when the entire world is watching your every move with a magnifying glass. This is how you conduct an operation that the West is desperate to stop. These ghost planes were not there to bring in aid or food. They were there as part of a strategic bridge between the alliance of Sahel states and Moscow. Rumors have been swirling in intelligence circles that Niger has finalized a massive deal to sell its 1,000-ton stockpile of uranium to Rosatom, Russia's state nuclear energy giant. The price tag being whispered is around $170 million. Now you have to understand the genius of this move. Russia doesn't desperately need this uranium for its own reactors. They have plenty of their own. This is about geopolitics. It is about taking the very fuel that has powered French cities for 50 years and redirecting it to Moscow. It is a message to the world that the era of Western economic control is over. For the leaders of the AES, like Ibrahim Traoré, this is the ultimate validation of their vision. And as they have always said that Africa can choose its own partners. They have said that we are no longer a colony that must ask for permission to trade our own goods. By working with Russia, they are proving that there is an alternative to the lopsided deals of the past. But this shift has sent shock waves of pure panic through the halls of power in Washington and Paris. To the West, this is a nightmare scenario. It's not just about losing a few tons of ore. It is about the collapse of the entire system of control they have maintained through military presence and currency manipulation. If Niger succeeds in selling this uranium on its own terms, the house of cards starts to fall. Look at the timing of the events. leading up to the airport attack. On January 23rd, just about a week before the guns started firing in Niamey, a Russian cargo ship called the Matros Shevchenko appeared off the coast of Togo. It didn't dock. It just sat there, positioned in international waters, waiting. Security analysts who track global shipping noted that its behavior was highly unusual. It was waiting for a specific cargo that was supposed to arrive from the interior of the continent. Connect the dots and the picture becomes crystal clear. The uranium was at the airport, the ghost planes were ready, and the ship was waiting off the coast. The pieces were all on the board for a historic transfer of wealth and power. And that is exactly when the pressure reached a boiling point. On January 21st, a high-level delegation from the European Union arrived in Niamey. Officially, they said they were there for a get-to-know-you visit with the new government. When they talked about regional security and mutual cooperation. But we are not children. We know that you don't send top-level diplomats to a revolutionary capital just to shake hands while $1 billion strategic asset is sitting in a hangar nearby. One anonymous diplomat later admitted that everyone in the room knew what was at stake. The message delivered behind closed doors was clear. We know what you are planning. We know the Russians are involved, and there will be severe consequences if you go through with this. Was the attack on the airport a week later the consequence they were talking about? Was the failed drone strike a desperate attempt to sabotage the airlift and prevent that uranium from ever reaching the Russian ship? In the world of high-level geopolitics, there's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything is planned, and every move is a response to another. The West saw that their diplomatic warnings were being ignored. They saw that the leaders of the AES were committed to their path, so they did what they have always done when they feel their control slipping. They resorted to the shadows. They activated assets, they used proxy forces, and they hoped for a quick, deniable victory that would force Niger back to the bargaining table. But they underestimated the new Africa. They underestimated the level of technical assistance and intelligence training that our soldiers have received. They didn't realize that we are now playing the game at their level. When those FPV drones were neutralized in the sky over Niamey, it wasn't just a military victory, it was a psychological one. It told the old masters that the days of easy interventions are over. It showed that we are ready to defend our partnerships with the same ferocity that we defend our soil. What we are witnessing in the Sahel right now is nothing short of an intelligence revolution. For decades, the story of Africa was one of being constantly caught off guard. We were the continent of surprises, where governments fell in the middle of the night and resources were stolen while our leaders were looking the other way. Western intelligence agencies, particularly from France and other colonial powers, operated across our lands with what they called total information dominance. They knew what was happening in our military barracks before our own generals did. They could activate a protest, fund an insurgency, or trigger a coup with a single phone call. They played God with our lives because they held all the cards in the shadows. But those days are over. The lions of the Sahel have learned how to hunt in the dark. The failure of the airport attack in Niamey was not a lucky break. It was the result of a massive upgrade in our counterintelligence capabilities. You see, the leaders of the Alliance of Sahel States Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso, Assimi Goïta in Mali, and Abdourahmane Tiani in Niger, realized very early on that military hardware is useless if your enemy knows your plans before you execute them. They didn't just buy drones and tanks. They invested in the minds of our soldiers and the technology of our listening posts. With the technical assistance of partners who actually treat us like sovereign nations, our intelligence services have been rebuilt from the ground up. They are now intercepting encrypted signals that used to pass right over our heads, and they are identifying foreign operatives who think they are invisible because they are wearing civilian clothes and driving unmarked cars. Look at the track record of President Ibrahim Traoré in Burkina Faso. He has survived multiple coup attempts in a very short period of time. How? It's not just because he has a loyal guard. It is because his intelligence network is now so deep and so sharp that they are catching the plotters while they are still in the whispering stage. They are rounding up the traitors and the foreign handlers before they can even draw their weapons. This is the kind of sophistication that the West never expected from a young African leader. They thought he was just another soldier, but he has proven to be a grandmaster of the strategic game. He understands that in the 21st century, the most powerful weapon isn't a missile. It's information. Think about the young African intelligence officers working in the shadows today. Men and women in their late 30s and early 40s, highly educated, fiercely patriotic, and tired of seeing their continent being treated like a chessboard for foreigners. They are the ones who sat in the dark rooms on January 29th, watching the monitors and listening to the intercepted chatter of the attackers. They saw the enemy coming. They watched as the foreign-funded operatives prepared their drones, thinking they were about to strike a blow against the revolution. Our officers didn't panic. They didn't call for Western help. They simply waited for the trap to close. This is a level of professional pride that we haven't seen in generations. It is a signal to the world that the incompetent African military is a myth of the past. The hunters have truly become the haunted. For 100 years, foreign agencies operated in the Sahel with zero risk. They could do whatever they wanted and always have a way out. But now, they are finding that their assets are being exposed, their networks are being burned. The silence coming from the Western capitals after the Niamey airport attack is the sound of absolute shock. They're trying to figure out how their sophisticated plan was detected so easily. To our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, those of you who've lived through the era of the Cold War and the many tragedies that befell African leaders in the 60s and 70s, this is the moment you have been praying for. Back then, our heroes like Thomas Sankara or Patrice Lumumba were often taken from us because we didn't have the intelligence infrastructure to protect them from foreign plots. But today, the generation of Ibrahim Traoré has learned the lessons of history. They are not just brave, they are smart. They are building a digital and human wall around our sovereignty. This is a high-stakes chess game where the future of our resources and our freedom is on the line. Every intercepted communication, every captured operative, and every failed sabotage attempt is a victory for the soul of Africa. We are no longer the victims of history. We are the ones writing it. The failed attack in Niamey was a message to every intelligence agency in the world. Africa is no longer your playground. We see you. We know what you want. And we are ready for you. As this counterintelligence revolution continues to grow. The shadow of the colonial past is finally being chased away by the bright light of African vigilance. The fires that lit up the night sky over Niamey on January 29th have long since burned out. But the smoke has cleared to reveal a world that will never be the same again. This was not just a skirmish over a few crates of yellowcake uranium. This was a seismic shift in the tectonic plates of global power. For the first time in centuries, the hunters who treated our continent as their private pantry found themselves staring into the eyes of a lion that refused to back down. The failed attack at the airport was a desperate dying gasp from an old order that simply cannot imagine an Africa that says no. They are terrified because they know that if Niger succeeds, if the alliance of Sahel states successfully moves their resources on their own terms, then the entire foundation of their wealth begins to crumble. We have to look at the bigger picture. This is about the energy that keeps Europe's lights on and the financial dominance that has kept the US dollar at the center of the world. For decades, the petrodollar system and the exploitation of African minerals were the two pillars of Western stability. But today, under the steady hand of leaders like Ibrahim Traoré, those pillars are cracking. When Africa chooses its own partners, when we trade our wealth for genuine development instead of empty promises and debt, the old masters lose their leverage. What does the future hold? Be rest assured that the forces of the old system will not walk away quietly. They will try again. They will look for new weak points, new traitors, and new ways to sow chaos. But they are facing a new reality. They are facing a generation of Africans who are no longer afraid. They are facing a counterintelligence shield that is getting stronger every single day. The uranium war is just the beginning of a much larger struggle for the total liberation of our continent. It is a struggle that requires every one of us to be vigilant and united. Whether you are in the heart of the Sahel or a child of the diaspora living in a Western city, your heart must beat for the freedom of the motherland. Think of the ancestors who dreamed of this day. Think of the men and women who gave their lives so that we could one day stand on our own soil and call it our own. We owe it to them, and we owe it to the children of the future. It's to never let this flame of sovereignty go out. The victory in Niamey was a sign that the tide has turned. The traps are being set for the oppressors now, and for the first time in history, they are the ones who are afraid of the dark. We are no longer the victims of a story written by others. We are the authors of our own destiny. As we close this chapter, I want to ask you a question that cuts to the very heart of who we are. Can Africa truly be free if we do not control the very resources that the rest of the world is willing to kill for? The answer is being written in the actions of the AES every day. If you believe in this vision, if you feel the pride of seeing our brothers and sisters finally standing tall, then I invite you to join this movement. This channel is more than just a place for news. It is a community of those who refuse to be silent. If your heart beats for the liberation of Africa, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We need to stay connected as these events unfold, because the mainstream media will never tell you the full truth. They want you to stay in the dark, but here we seek the light. Stand with us, stand with the AES, and stand with the future of a sovereign Africa. Before you go, let us perform a small ritual of solidarity. I want you to go down into the comments right now and type a word of power. If you believe that God is on the side of the oppressed and that justice will finally come to our lands, type Amen. If you believe that our continent is rising and will never be brought down again, type Africa Rise. Let the world see thousands of voices united in one spirit. Let them see that the diaspora and the homeland are one. I am your host, and it is an honor to bring these truths to you. Keep your eyes on the Sahel. Keep your hearts in the faith. And remember that the dawn is coming. Stand tall, stay strong, and I will see you in the next one. It is a bye-bye for now, but the struggle continues until every chain is broken.